Hi everybody, Linda here. Things around my quirky quarter acre have settled down just a little bit. That craziness of the whole big harvest from summer is winding down. I'm still getting a few things, but nothing like it was. So let's go take a look and see what's happening this week. We've had a new visitor around here. I am not sure where this guy or girl came from. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch it because it is pretty skittish. I am actually using the zoom to get these pictures of it because it's pretty skittish. So it's also very chatty. The melon patch and the pumpkin patch have been cleared out completely. The melons just stopped producing all of a sudden and the vines all died off. So I just pulled everything out, and I do have a few weeds in there along the center where that seam is, and I'll have to get in there and clean those up. But overall, I'm thinking this part of the garden is pretty much done until spring, and now I'll have to figure out what I'm going to put here next year. The pumpkin patch is the same. I ended up taking everything out, and to suppress this crazy bunch of weeds that was growing down the middle here where the grass got out of control and all of that, he came in here and mowed it, and I put this weed barrier down to kind of suppress everything. And I think, even though I can still feel a little bit of crunchiness under there, I think that for the most part it's working and the weeds are starting to die off. That is a big buzzard. New arrangement for these pots is working out pretty nicely so far. I have lemon basil over here, chives, and the volunteer avocado tree, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do with yet. This was the status that died. Sweet basil and the purple basil. The sweet basil is still fairly bushy, but the purple basil has started to bloom, and so I'm just going to let that reseed itself. This is the tansy, which got started. It didn't grow quite as much as I hoped, so I'm hoping that'll come back next year and I don't have to replant. The peppermint's doing well. It's spreading out along the whole surface area here, so this should be filled in nicely by next spring. This is a pepper plant that didn't do anything. I planted something here, but I don't remember what it was. Let's see, what are you? Well, I think this might be celery, but I don't quite recall. The comfrey is here, and it's finally growing. There was a pepper plant there that never did much of anything, and it died. And then the oregano is there, and this cucumber on the end never did much of anything either. It was one that I just needed somewhere to put it. It sort of was left over, and I just stuck it in there, and it didn't do anything much, so it's going to come out. It is blooming. You can see there and there, but it's never made a cucumber, so I'm thinking this one was not happy growing in a container, and next year I will do all of my cucumbers in the ground. The swamp rose has finished blooming, and it is making seed pods, which are really interesting. They're related to okra. This is the hibiscus, and the seed pods are a little slimy, a lot like the okra pods are, which is interesting. But I guess it's to be expected since they are cousins. And I still need to deal with this patch back here. I am considering putting down some weed barrier just to suppress things, but I'll have to get in there and cut it all down first. These raspberries seriously need trellising, and they also need some weed barrier down to clear that space out. I actually got a 300-foot roller weed barrier, so that's going to be a job to do. The pumpkin vines over here are mostly gone. The squash vines have been pulled out. I left that Jubilee watermelon. It is blooming, but I doubt it's going to have time to make anything else. It's not hurting anything though, and now it's got plenty of space, so I'm just going to leave it. That's my rutabaga crop over there. I thought I'd planted turnips in one of those beds, so I planted rutabagas in the other one, but when I looked at the map, the note that I made said both of them were rutabagas, so it's a good thing we like rutabagas. Spinach and turnips. And my dinosaur kale is sprouting better than it did in the spring, and I've put it down here in the ground instead of in the raised beds, so it may be part of the difference, but I will see how that goes. I think that if I get a good crop of it, then I will try growing this again. I'm not sure how long it will take it to go to seed. If it does, I'll try and save the seeds, but if it doesn't, I have other seeds for a different kind of kale that I can plant next year. I only have a couple of tomato plants left. I have one rosella. I'm really going to be sad to see that one go. It's been my favorite tomato this year so far. And I have a couple of the Juliets. Even though I wasn't crazy about the tomatoes, I did leave them because the plants were looking pretty good. And there's one on the end, which I don't quite remember what it is. These tomatoes over here are looking pretty gnarly too. That cherry or grape tomato, whichever it is really still producing a lot, but they're so small that I've been putting most of those in the dehydrator because you can only eat so many, and I've been extremely disappointed with the slicer tomatoes this year. I did not really get any that were good producers and tasted good. I got one off the Get Stuffed, and I discovered that apparently the part of the tomato that I like is the inner part and the gel, which the Get Stuffed really didn't have a lot of since it's made for stuffing. And the beefsteaks, I finally got two, but I think part of the problem with these tomatoes may have been just that I was not really tending them that well. These were not pruned, they weren't staked or anything like that, so that's entirely my fault, being a lazy gardener. For fall, I have planted lettuce and radishes, and the radishes are up nicely, but the lettuce, which should be in between the radishes, has yet to sprout. Now those seeds were kind of old, so I'm not sure whether they'll grow or not. I do have greens planted in other places, so if they don't grow, I guess it'll all work out even somehow. There's the second crop of beans that I planted about a month ago, I think. They have already reached the top of the trellis, and I see some blooms, so I may get more beans this year, which would be great because I really like these beans. I'm going to plant a lot more of them next year. The Japanese daikon radishes. More radishes here. These are the narrow tondo black radishes from Johnny Seeds, and on the other side is a Nelson radish. I've never grown or eaten either one of these before, so we will see how we like those. There's somebody that better not be down here eating my garden. Those beans stopped producing a while back. They're still blooming, but they don't seem to be producing any beans. So I think those are going to come out. This Atrus pepper plant has gotten really tall for a pepper plant. It's pretty tall and bushy, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's got about a dozen peppers on it right now. This is a small one. And this is the San Marconi pepper, which is about half the size of the atrus plant. It's, yeah, it's about half as tall. But it has produced really well too, and I have one here that's getting ripe. So I'll be picking that one pretty soon, and of course saving the seeds out of it. The Kajari melon vine and the Tennessee dancing gourd vines have taken over this entire space. This is where the squash were, and part of the raised bed. They're actually planted in the raised bed. They have sprawled out into the strawberry patch, and I think the strawberries will be okay because they weren't growing much right now anyway. And there is one little gourd. This actually has several gourds on it, but that's the one that seems to be the biggest right now. You can also see that the leaves are getting damaged from bugs and powdery mildew. I also replanted the jelly melons since I didn't get any down in the melon patch. I can't tell at this point whether it's making anything or not because I've got the same problem I had with the other ones where the vines are all intertwined, running over each other, tangled up, and the Kajari melon and the jelly melon leaves look very similar. So it's kind of hard to tell if they are blooming. I don't really see any green anything in there, no green fruit, so I'll have to wait and see if I find any later on. And the carrots are looking really good. They're growing well. And I think there's a parsnip or two in there. I hope so. As you can see, things are winding down a little bit around here, and that's okay. I'm honestly glad for the break. At this point in the year, everything is in transition. So from here on out, it's going to be mostly greens and root veggies. Probably a few beans will come in, I hope. The flowers are pretty much done. The herbs are pretty much done. The melons are still growing. The gourds will stay out there until the frost kills the vine, or the gourds dry up and are ready to harvest, whichever comes first. That will give me something to do over the winter. In fact, I'm thinking that over the winter, when there isn't a whole lot going on out here in the garden, especially if it's a harder winter, which they seem to be predicting. I know the last few winters have been pretty mild, and that is actually generally typical for here. But every once in a while, western Kentucky gets a colder winter with a good bit of snow, and that seems to be where the predictions are heading this year. I hope not, because I really don't like it, but we have to take what Mother Nature gives us, and we'll find out when winter gets here. But for now, I'm still going to enjoy being outside in the cooler weather and the things that are still growing. Thanks for watching. Thanks especially to the new subscribers. Glad to have you on board, and I hope that you enjoy following me on my gardening journey. Until next time, blessings.